Good morning on this Friday morning. I get to wear this thing that makes me feel more like saying, welcome to Wendy's, may I take your order, please? But anyway, I want to start out with a shameless plug for one of my grandkids, okay? So just brace yourself for that. But it actually does tie in. You can make about any grandkid story tie into your message. I found that. But maybe about 3 years ago now, one of my Michigan grandkids, it's a bad rap for Michiganders that they're just kind of like short and curt and this and that or whatever, reserved, because really, some of them are just really sweet and over the top kind. And this one particular time I went into my daughter's house, and they don't wear shoes in their house, and for good reason. They're out on the farm and all that, so you kick your shoes off at the door. Well, I did the unpardonable. I got all the way into the living room with my shoes on. And my 5-year-old grandson, I think at that time, saw that we had a really bad problem on our hands. So he came into where I was sitting in the living room and he said, you won't want to wear your shoes in here. He said, may I take those for you, please? There was something about, beyond just a shameless plug for a grandkid, there was something about servant-heartedness that melts hearts and builds bridges into people's lives. Linda and I keep ourselves reminded of this at home by a plaque that we bought somewhere that says, be kinder than necessary. On the other hand, all of us have been on the receiving end of some, just to put it plainly, some pretty dumb things that people have said, some harsh things. I remember one time, this is so long ago, and I'm so glad that I don't even remember who said it to me, but I was at IHC in Dayton, standing at the bottom of the escalators, and somebody, and again, I'm so glad they're faceless in my memory, walked up to me and said, I've always wanted to compliment you on how well you speak, but I thought it might go to your head. And it's like, thanks, question mark. Linda and I, when we were young in ministry, and we got called, and I don't know why we got called some of the places we got called. And we were just at that stage of life where you just say yes to everything. I suppose if they would have called us for a puppet ministry, we would have done that too, and worried about how you do it later. But so we're Southport Church of the Nazarene, big, beautiful Nazarene church. Linda's got this accordion, it's electric accordion. We're standing out there in front of everybody. She's playing this beautiful introduction to the song, except for neither one of us can remember the song. And it's revival time, and their pastor yells across the platform, sing one you know. So, well, I want to talk to us this morning about the tone of our life, the impact that our life has on others. And I don't know if this is just to make me feel better or to just kind of forewarn you. This is not so much a sermon as a heart talk. And for some of you, this may hit you in some ways as new, and some of you, it's probably going to sail over your head, and later on you may connect back to what I'm saying. Some of you, though, may be fertile soil this morning for some of the things I'm about to say, and I hope they'll make a connection in your heart. The thing that really launched this was I came back from the summer and I was kind of shooting the breeze with one of my colleagues here, and I was talking about being around a table, and this is going to sound small, but I was sitting around a table at an event. It wasn't a GBS trip, and it was a pastor, and I offered to get up and get him a drink, a refill on his drink, and he said, Don, you don't have to be in PR mode right now. And I hope he was teasing, but I sort of felt like he wasn't. And that was disappointing to me. Not for me so much, it's not going to change me or my focus. I kind of lamely stumbled through something like, well, I just, really just want to do it. But when I left that event with all the hubbub of that event, one of the things that had kind of a little disappointing memory that got jotted down in my mental journal were the words of that pastor saying, to my overture to be kind and to do something for him, for it to be just sort of reduced to PR. And out of that conversation, I got, be careful who you talk to, because then they asked me to talk in chapel today. Titus chapter 3 has a little phrase in it that really speaks to me. I love the phrase, the kindness of God. Verse 3, chapter 3 of Titus, for we were foolish, disobedient, deceived, enslaved to various lusts and pleasures. Man, I'm finding myself in about every one of these. Spending our life in malice and envy, hateful, hating one another. And then comes verse 4. But when the kindness of God our Savior and his love for mankind appeared, he saved us. Not on the basis of deeds which we have done in righteousness, but according to his mercy. Over the top, being kinder than necessary, by the washing of regeneration and the renewing by the Holy Spirit. President Avery talked to us on Monday about the importance of being ready to genuinely love others when you step out into your ministries one of these days. And so I was trying to somehow reduce this universe that's in my mind about this subject down to enough that I could let you out here this morning on time. And so I decided just to sort of eclectically pick out some things that for you to think about, jot down, pray about in this whole business of learning to love. Number one, love is a choice. It's not primarily a feeling. It's a choice. Now, some of you come from backgrounds where you've seen love in action out of one or both of your parents, and you've seen enough at home that you're entering college life knowing what genuine love and care looks like, what it feels like, and you're ready to imitate it now because you've seen it modeled. Pastor Travis talked to us on Wednesday about masking things in our life. And I have no doubt that there's some of us here this morning that are masking because there's nothing else to do at the moment, it seems. Masking some of the baggage and maybe some of the brokenness that we sang about this morning. Masking it with a smile. Maybe somebody listening to today comes from a home where you felt like you were more of an object than an individual. You felt objectified. What I mean is your opinion didn't matter. You didn't really matter unless you served the family needs real well. And yet, in God's wise providence, he has his hand on you, and you're here. And for some of you, alongside the brokenness of your life, you also even have a specific call of God to some ministry. Sometimes we see ourselves and some hope in someone else's story. And so I sort of reluctantly share this, but I'm going to go ahead and share this because I want to help, especially some of you that have come into GBS with some of the picture I just talked about, to know God has a roadmap for you forward, okay? When I left home, I was sort of like Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde in one sense. I had learned socialization skills. I knew very well how to make the people back home pat me on the head, love Don Davison, and I was sort of this little rock star at my church. But inside, I knew very little, for one thing, about real discipleship, about Monday through Saturday living for Jesus. But I also was hard as a rock emotionally. But I knew how to mask, and I knew how to present myself as this happy-go-lucky guy that's really interacting. And you would have thought that I had a lot of emotional empathy and sympathy and some of those kind of things. But in fact, my wife and I got married while I was a student here, and the truth was, I couldn't feel sympathy or empathy. I truly did not know what it felt like to feel sorry for someone else. As amazing as that may sound. If I would have saw a kid fall over on a bicycle and get hurt, I would have basically felt nothing. And by the great grace of God, he allowed me to marry a beautiful individual who just, man, I got to get this steeled up here. Just by living with her, started introducing me to a new reality of that there could actually be genuine, non-sarcastic, selfless love. And it didn't take very long for the first little buds of empathy and being able to sympathize with others. And it actually felt good to feel sorry for other people, to feel like I could connect with their hurts. The background that I came from also was you were a fake if you expressed love, if you didn't actually have the feeling or emotions right then to back it up. That's pretty unhandy. And if you've come to GBS training for ministry, I sincerely hope that God will start helping you to see now what it means to offer the sacrifice of enthusiasm, the sacrifice of caring words. I remember traveling with Garen Wolf. He wanted to travel about like a hole in the head. He's the former chairman of the music division here and traveled with the choir and band. And he wanted to travel like a hole in the head, and I knew it. And I'd see him some days I would know pretty much that he wasn't even feeling good as he rode on the bus. But then he'd get in service that night. And he'd flail his arms and act like he was fighting bumblebees, and he'd turn around and he'd just pour his heart into that service, and sometimes he'd come off the band box and he'd be halfway down the aisle and he'd be, And after a while I caught on, and I learned from Brother Wolf about the sacrifice of praise. And then my mind trailed back to my pastor. Every Sunday morning, every Sunday night, every Wednesday night, I think if I would have met him at the gas station, he would have been like just full of life and enthusiasm, Brother Eugene Gray. And after a while, once I got old enough to realize it, I looked back and I realized he tricked me. He didn't always feel that way. Sometimes he probably was wiping big tears and had a concrete block on his heart and was going through some of the heaviest trials of his life, but when he got to church and got in that pulpit, he offered the sacrifice of praise and leadership and worship to the Lord. Was he a fake? Absolutely not. We're talking about being kinder than necessary here. Let me take a quick rabbit trail. Wow. From my heart, thank God, I am so glad that the folks who loved me into God's kingdom and who have showered me with compassionate love in God's kingdom didn't wait for their emotions to kick in before they loved me and cared for me. Sometimes when you're offering compassion to folks who are hurting, it can feel like you're being a little over the top on the whole sympathy, empathy thing, especially if you come from a family that's like deadpan, Or if there's a lot of ER nurses here like my wife, my wife and I make a great combination. I'll hug you and pray with you and cry with you, and I won't fix anything. And she'll just kind of be like, all right, we need to fix something here, and roll up her sleeves and get to work, all right? Based on your background, it can feel like you're being a little over the top on the whole sympathy, empathy thing and a part of that is this, because you're not presently going through what those people are going through. So you don't actually feel the hurt, and so the words and the emotional energy that you present, that you prepare, that you offer them can feel a little manufactured, maybe even unnecessary or even fake. Okay? Are you with me? And maybe ringing in your ears is, kind of your family narrative. Like, we're not going to be like that, man. We're going to be real. We're going to be the real deal. And they have the mistaken idea of what the real deal is. and don't really understand the sacrifice of empathy. It feels over the top until you're the one going through your next valley and your life hits a wall and someone just like you offers the sacrifice of compassionate empathy, not hypocrisy or fake concern, but they make the choice to love you through it and to love you on purpose. And man, all of a sudden it just feels so natural. And then it never feels like it's too much, does it? Because now you are on the other side of it and you're going through it. When I came to GBS, that Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, the hard rock in my heart was because I had hardened into an adult. And please, this is not about me. I know all this, and it doesn't change anything, and hopefully I've processed through this. But I really want to share it because I felt like the Lord kept bringing me back to this. Rather than just give examples of what love looks like out in ministry, talk about the root cause that keeps people from showing love and being able to show love. I was brittly bitter at my mother. I was one of those peacemakers, pacifiers, and had it up to here by the time I came to God's Bible school, just being blunt, with trying to pacify the dominant, hard to get along with parent in my home. When I went to the Hallmark card shop back then, we did more card buying. Man, it was a chore to find something in all these mushy cards that was true, and I could still go to heaven, but I could buy this card for my mom, okay? And then God showed me one of the greatest revelations of my life was when God reached into my family narrative and picked me out and took me aside and said, now, son, I didn't love you the way you're loving your mother. Love isn't based on her performance. It's not based on your feelings. It's not based on emotions. But love is a very objective thing you do where you set the kind of value that God set on someone else. You set that value on them. I was taken to Romans 5, 6 through 8. One of my favorite verses when I talk about how God set this value on us. When I was a big, fat 0, spiritually, on a scale of 0 to 10, Scripture tells me that while I was still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly. For one will scarcely die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person one would even dare to die. But God shows his love for us in that while I was still a sinner, Christ died for me. Can you wrap your brain around that? A big, fat 0. I love the value word in John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave. What did he give? The treasure of heaven was crucified for me. That's the kind of value he put on me. Not after he had saved me and watched me a while and made sure that my performance earned his love. Wow. But while I was yet a sinner. Are you catching on? And God said, you need to do that for your mom. Don, I want you to make her a 10. Okay? And I felt a little check before the message this morning to say, timing is everything here. So I don't want you to walk out of here with some guilt trip. God's timing will lead you into and through these things. And a lot of good godly counsel will lead you through. So no guilt trips here. But you'll know when it's right. And God said, Don, make your mom a 10. Wow. 10. She's hard to buy a card for. Yeah. So, as I recall, it was like picking up the phone, calling her. You see, the treasure principle is that where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. So, you've got to give something of value of you, put it into the other person, because then your heart will start owning that person, okay? And so I had to start putting things in my mother that were expensive to me, that, caused effort, made me build a bridge, made me engage. And it started out very perfunctory, very willfully. And after a while, wow, man, I'm not promising you this happened, but I can testify it happened for me. The emotions caught up with it. And then they went past it. And she not only was arbitrarily a 10, she was a 10. She was an 11, she was 100. My love caught up, okay, from the willful choice I made to love my mother. And I had the privilege at her funeral to be the guy that got to preach it and to say the last few loving things over my mom. And in the end, I believe she made it. Okay. Wow, there's so many rabbit trails here because I want to be so careful I don't do more damage than I do good. This kind of love does not turn a blind eye to things that must be processed. Well, with the right counsel, with the leadership of the Spirit of God, helping you to apply what I've been talking about today, it can be a powerful key to unlock deadlocked relationships in your life. Love is a choice. Loving others isn't always easy. I wanted to put on this one, loving others isn't for wimps. Somebody told me yesterday at the picnic, said, I came to God's Bible School thinking that only perfect people get to do ministry. And wow. You know what? I don't blame you for thinking that. If you've grown up in an atmosphere where you weren't close enough to your leaders to understand that brokenness and greatness can run parallel in the same life, it would be very easy for you to think that the only way you'll ever be able to do anything for Jesus is if you get really, really perfect enough. The truth is, as I look back through my life, if I'd been God, I probably would have hung a closed for remodeling sign on my life so many times you could not count. And yet God didn't see it that way. And he kept giving me assignments and kept giving me things to do, including this morning. And it's like, wow, you still have to keep pedaling the bicycle while God's working on you. The beautiful thing about the Lord is that he doesn't lock our brokenness away in a room to hide it. He actually heals it. I want to be fair. If you come from the right kind of background, I don't mean to be morbid here, but in a way I hope this just helps you to understand things so that you don't think you're supposed to be all different by the time you graduate here. The consequence of some dysfunction in some homes is that you'll be living the rest of your life healing and understanding, becoming whole. Can I say that without sounding too negative? I just want you to understand that so you don't put an unreasonable time frame on things saying, well, man, I'm still trying to learn my lessons. You will be as you go down through life. That's okay. I have actually found that some of the experiences that I went through growing up, having to learn how to love a parent that was incredibly hard to love, actually prepared me well for some of the tough cases I've run across in ministry. And I'm just going to fast forward by closing out with this, and then we're going to finish this morning. There was a faculty member and his wife here at God's Bible School that I thought was just worthy of incredible honor. And they retired from here. And then every time they would come back, from my heart, I heaped honor on them. I would find them on campus, I would go over to them, and I would say words of love and praise and affirmation to them. The man would accept it. The woman was cold, okay? And it went like that for years. All right, let me just give you a little hint. Loving people is not something where you can set a timer until it goes ding, and then they better have cooperated with your love. Servanthood is acting like a servant when I'm treated like one. Okay? And so I kept on saying nice things to them, really with no idea that anything was ever going to change. And one day, it was kind of cool. Back in the back, she stopped me. And she was kind of like a mama figure, and she kind of got my attention whenever she spoke. And she said, "Young man, I'd like to have a word with you." She said, "You've been nice to me down through all of these years, and I've been cold." And she said, "I want to apologize for that." I said, "Well, that's fine," but I said, "if you could just realize that the words that I've been telling you are just as real as if they were a box and wrapped up, and I'm handing them to you. I mean them with all my heart." She said, "I know that, and that's why I'm apologizing." My background actually got me ready to deal with tough, cold, crusty cases. And God can use your past and your background not as a disqualifier, but actually as a special qualifier on your resume to get you ready to reach people that I can't reach and others can't reach, but you can. God uses our suffering and the comfort wherewith we've been comforted to comfort others. I want us to close out this morning by singing this song as a prayer to the Lord. Hopefully it comes up here on the... Let's stand. I especially want to sing this because of verse 2, where it says, "I've been so loved that I'll risk loving too." If I would have had time this morning, I would have wanted to finish out with the fact that loving others means loving yourself. And that means there's a risk involved in opening up yourself to love others, okay? But let's sing this and then we'll be dismissed this morning. I then shall live as one who's been forgiven. I'll walk with joy to know my debts are paid. I know my name is clear before my Father. I am his child, and I am not afraid. So greatly pardoned, I'll forgive my brother. The law of love I gladly will obey. I then, oh, let's sing it. As one who's learned compassion, I've been so loved that I'll risk loving too. I know how fear builds walls instead of bridges. I'll dare to see another's point of view. And when relationships relationships demand commitment, then I'll be there to care and follow through. Your kingdom come around and through and in me, your power and glory, let them shine through me. Your hallowed name, oh, may I bear with honor, and may your living kingdom come in me. The bread of life, oh, may I share, oh yes, and may you feed a hungry world through me. Thank you for your attention, and you're dismissed.